perfect. Thank you so much for keeping an eye. I was actually speaking just to hold space until he comes back. So thank you so much for tuning back in. Koma Hopewell, over to you.
Thank you very much. So before we were interrupted, I had explained that 166 million US dollars worth of gold is smuggled out of Zimbabwe every month. And that comes up to 2 billion US dollars, which is smuggled out. And this money belongs to you and me, and it belongs to the private sector as well. By you and me, I refer to the mines that are owned by the Zimbabwean government on behalf of the citizens of Zimbabwe. That mineral source, which is mined through these mines, belongs to all of us. And now you have addressed or put forward a question to say, how does this affect us? And I had started to explain that Zimbabwe has got 5 central hospitals: Mpilo, Harare, which is now Salem Gabe, Chitungwiza, and UBH and Parenyatwa. They all need 50 million US dollars. If you add Ingucheni, which is a psychiatric, they'll need 55. But let's work with the 5 that I've mentioned. They need 50 million US dollars. I think someone has got their mic on, so it's sort of interfering. So these hospitals require 50 million US dollars to run for the whole year without any shortages. Today, we are aware that these hospitals do not have basic medication like paracetamol, like betadine. They don't have bandages. Parenyatwa has not been functioning as a hospital for the past 10 months. It's functioning on emergency mode. And so if you look at the cost that I've referred to of $50 million, and if you then look at how much they steal how much they smuggle every month, that would run the 5 central hospitals in Zimbabwe for 3 years, and you still have change of 16 million US dollars. If you consider the total amount of gold that is smuggled out of Zimbabwe every year, which is 12 months, it means what is smuggled could have run these hospitals, the 5 central hospitals in Zimbabwe, for 40 years. This is how much the citizens are losing. 2,500 Zimbabwean women die every year giving birth because the quality of maternity theaters is bad and they are not there. The biggest hospital in Zimbabwe is called Salem Gabe, not Parenyatwa, it's Salem Gabe. And it has only one maternity theater, which was built by Ian Smith in 1977. The current government has not built a single maternity theater at the biggest hospital in Zimbabwe. A maternity theater costs only $37,000 to build. It means what is lost through smuggling from gold that belongs to the citizens of Zimbabwe, that is mined in mines that are run by the government of Zimbabwe, would build 54,000 maternity units, maternity theaters. That's what this money would build. 54,000 maternity units would be built from the gold that is smuggled every year out of Zimbabwe under the radar. And yet, the biggest hospital in Zimbabwe has not had a single maternity theater built by the ZANU-PF government in the past 44 years, 43 or 44 years. So when you come to the issue of the smuggling itself, you saw from the film, the first film, when Henrietta Shwaya was offering a 4% discount for the gold that was going to be smuggled. She was able to do so because they're not paying taxes. They're not paying royalties. They're not paying pensions. They're not paying environmental assessment fees. They are just going to get gold from small artisanal miners, undercutting them by over 30%, and smuggling it outside the country. So the taxes that private miners pay, commercial miners like Rio Tinto, what they pay is not being paid by these smugglers. They pay income tax, which funds hospitals, schools, building of roads, clean drinking water in our homes. This is what the big miners pay. But these small miners, who are being undercut by the likes of Henrietta Schweier, and the Henrietta Schweiers, when they smuggle this gold, there's no tax being paid, which means that the Zimbabwean citizen is being derived of tax, is being derived of royalties. There's the miners themselves, that is now miners, the makorokozas, they don't have pension, they don't have health care. Akarwara anogona kungofa kana asina mari. And this is all being done at the detriment of companies like Rio Tinto that are actually paying taxes. When companies like Rio Zim go to sell their gold to Fidelity, which is a Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe owned company, they are given initially it was 60-40%. What I mean by that is that the US dollar component would come in 60% and the 40% would be RTGS, but it has now gone up to 75%. So they get 75% of their money in US dollars, but at the fixed rate of 900. We all know that the US dollar is now at 1,600 to 1,800 in the streets. Whereas the likes of Henrietta Schweier, they go and sell their gold in Dubai, they come back, they buy Zim dollars if they need them they sell their US dollars on the market at 1.6, whereas the miners are selling theirs at 900. And the 25% component of their sale comes in RTGS, which we know is useless and nobody wants it. So the tax revenue that is lost when Henrietta says to the guy in the film called Mr. Stanley that I will give you 4% discount, it's 4% discount that could be tax revenue that would actually go and fund hospitals. And at the conclusion of their sale, there is no tax revenue in totality that is paid at all. And when the gold leaves the country, it lives under the radar, and they go and sell it on a cheap as well in Dubai. They discount because it's a quick sell. They want to sell quickly and come back. So the country is losing on so many fronts. It's losing on income tax revenue. It's losing on corporate tax revenue. It's losing on all these other fees that the big companies are paying, environmental taxes and so forth. And it undermines the guys that are playing by the book, which are the big companies. But these smugglers are protected, as we saw in the film, by the big guys who are in charge of the state, so they can get away with it. And as we shall see, no one is going to be prosecuted. As we saw with Henrietta, she was caught at the Harare International Airport with evidence of 6.7 kilograms. But the National Prosecution Authority is saying they do not have evidence. And they chose to prosecute me for exposing the corruption, that she was going to get bail unopposed. And I'm still going to court 3 years later because of that. It shows you that the corrupt are powerful and they fight back and they protect each other and they use state institutions, undermine them in order to get whatever corrupt proceeds that they would have looted and plundered from us. So the artisanal miners also are not paying taxes because the bulk of this gold that they are taking out of the country is coming from artisanal miners who are not paying taxes and royalties. They are not paying them as well. They are prey. They are preyed. It's actually slavery in supply chains. It's a form of slavery. because these guys, the artisanal miners, they just wait for these guys to come. They pay them whatever they want to pay them. There's no taxes paid there. The gold comes to Harare, it leaves the country, no taxes have been paid. And this has been caused by the destruction of the formal economy. The government has failed to create an environment conducive for these people to be employed. Most of these people would rather have a 9 to 5 job, which assures them of a pension, which assures them of healthcare, and the ability to take their kids to school. But with this kind of mining, they are not assured of all that. They live on a day to day. And most of them, as you have seen, they get killed, they get involved in fights. There's thuggery, which is driven by the political elites, as you saw in Kwekwe. Um, and at the top of the chain was the State Security Minister Muda in Kwekwe. So it shows that this criminality, this undermining of the state and undermining of the tax revenue system is being done by political elites who are in charge of the state. So the state is actually participating in undermining companies that are playing by the book, gold miners, and undermining the survival of the state itself, because when the state does not or is not in a position to fund hospitals, it means that it becomes a security risk when people go to hospitals and there's no access to paracetamol. And all this is being caused by a system which is run by people who are connected to the state or are part of the state. It becomes very problematic. So the lack of an environment that is conducive for investment, people can't come to a country where the judiciary can't be trusted, where the judiciary will make ridiculous rulings, where the judiciary will bend rules in order to accommodate unconstitutional rulings, as we saw in the case of the Chief Justice. Investment doesn't come. Investment is a coward. It doesn't come where it feels threatened. So this is affecting us in so many ways, which I wish the opposition political elites would be able to articulate properly without just chanting slogans, but actually explaining to the citizens how it affects healthcare, how it affects schools, how it affects roads which are potholed, how it affects the delivery of clean drinking water, how it affects the environment itself. If you drive across the country, you will see that most gorges are now very dangerous. Where there's the environmental management assessment, you are able to say, no, you can't do it this way, you have to do it that way. But a lot of our land out there is now dangerous. It's even affecting farming, because these people get permits, they go into people's farms, they mine dangerously. You saw at Gold and Phoenix in Kwekwe, they went there, they've been digging under the school, and the school collapsed, and kids were injured and hurt, ended up going into hospital. I think about 7 to 9 kids were injured. So about 63% of the cost of production that is paid by legitimate miners, these people are not paying it. And as I said, the legitimate miners get their US dollar at 900 because it's a fixed rate, but the likes of Generator Shwaya get theirs at 16 to 1,800. There are no pensions for the people who are doing this mining. There's no health and safety. So when a legitimate company which is mining goes to sell its gold, they CD1 form, they declare, they say we're going to bring X amount, this is the amount that we're taking out of the country. Henrietta is not signing or writing any CD1 forms, she just smuggles. With CD1 forms, the money must come back into the country. That is the money that helps the banking system. But in this case, as you saw with that guy called Brother Paul. Um, they take the gold outside the country. They don't bring back the money. They get to the airport. They say that they've brought back 2 million when they've got, in his case, when he came back at about 98,000 US dollars. So we are being lied to that this is being done to sanctions bust. There's no sanctions busting that is taking place. They're actually destroying the Zimbabwean economy by externalizing funds, taking the gold out of the country and not bringing the money back. So, as I said in my initial um, statement, it's affecting us in so many ways. But I've decided to use health to demonstrate how it's affecting us. We do not have a, a we do not have a radiotherapy cancer machine in Zimbabwe. Thousands of Zimbabweans are dying every month, every year from cancer. But we do not have one. And we have been talking about this and pleading with the government to buy a cancer machine, but they haven't done so. But what is looted from this gold alone every month? What they take out every month? If they were going to say this month we are going to just buy cancer machines from the gold that is going to be smart gold, it would buy 83 cancer machines, radiotherapy cancer machines. But Zimbabwe does not have a single radiotherapy cancer machine. Zimbabwe does not have MRI scan machines. The town with the biggest man-made lake in the world, Kariba, does not even have an X-ray, which costs 10,000 US dollars. So this is the impact that it has on you and myself and everyone else. We are not able to get healthcare. Those that do not have funds will die. We are not able to drive on good roads. The cost of driving on good roads, I just had my suspension done, bits and pieces of my suspension. I had to pay about 4,000 US dollars. That is the cost. This is $4,000 that I could have invested in buying more goats for my project. But I'm having to spend it on a suspension because I'm driving on terrible roads that have not been fixed because the money has been stolen. So even if you have got relatives in the diaspora and they're sending you money to fix your suspension for your car, that money could have been used for other family business. You could have done something with that money. So you're being derived of the basic necessities of life that other people in other countries actually have access to. And when you look at the issue of water, there's no clean drinking water in Harare, in Bulawayo, and in all the other cities. I drilled a borehole when I bought my property, and that borehole cooled that money that I used to drill the borehole to buy the pump. I could have used it for other things. Um, every day we are having to use extra power, electricity, to pump water into our homes. This is unnecessary expenditure that would not have been used if we were living in a normal society where the country's natural resources are not being plundered, where taxes are not being avoided. This is tax evasion. It's criminality that is taking place. I mean, having watched the 3 films and now we're waiting for the 4th one, what I've seen is just criminality from start to end. People planning to subvert tax laws, people planning to subvert airports regulations, people planning to steal from the state itself, people planning to commit crimes, people abusing their offices with the ambassador at large, and the small fish that we saw in the film, one guy running the airport. It creates a danger for travelers as well, because you don't know what can be put on a plane. And why do we attract these criminals like Brother Paul? He almost bankrupted Kenya. He came here through Maim Juru. They opened duty-free shops at airports. Those duty-free shops are not actually meant to be duty-free shops. These are money laundering enterprises. What they do is, at the end of the day, they'll record sales that have not happened, and then they will take that dirty money and bank it so it looks legit, it looks clean, it's now in the banking system. And this is criminality that is being done at an airport, which is a security point place. But one would ask, why is this being allowed to happen? It's being allowed to happen because it involves the powerful elites. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Hopewell, for that. I have a question. You mentioned that the gold. This is actually a $2 billion industry. Why is it that nobody in Zimbabwe raised the alarm to say that there must be something wrong? Why did it have to take Al Jazeera to be the ones to lodge this investigation? Is it because people were unaware that this money was disappearing? Uh, I don't quite understand. Do you have any idea why nobody raised the alarm? Hello? Hopewell, can you hear me?
Hello, sorry, my microphone was off.
Okay, thank you.
I was raising the alarm all the time. It's only that people were not paying attention to what I was saying. I've just put a tweet on the top of this Twitter space, 1 April 2022, when I was talking about gold smuggling. Um, and you know, I've been saying it, and I've been asking why the opposition is quiet. And when we ask, as you saw the past 3 days, we are called ZANU-PF surrogates. We are insulted. This is work that is not meant for journalists. This is what the opposition political elites should be doing. Um, and I just want to demonstrate to you that I've been talking about these things, but people were not paying attention. When I pushed the opposition, I was called names. On 7, the next tweet that I've put on the top of this Twitter space, on 16 July 2021, I was talking about 100 million worth of gold is smuggled out of Zimbabwe every month. I was mentioning these things, but people were not paying attention. So when we ask the opposition to up its game, it's not because we hate the opposition. It's not because we hate Chamisa. It's because we expect them to play the role of the opposition. I've just put another tweet from 5 from 10, I think 10 October, no, 10 May, where I said, imagine living in a country where a citizen is persecuted for removing garbage, yet criminals are allowed to smuggle gold through Robert Mugabe Airport. 100 million worth of gold is smuggled out of Zimbabwe every month. Yet our central hospitals only need 60 million annually. This was in 2021 when I was talking about this. So we have been talking about it, um, and people were not paying attention. I've just posted another one where I said on the left, you have an outcome, on the right, you have the cause. Sadly, some were defending Scott, and this is on 29 October 2020 when I was talking about this. That gold is being smuggled by these guys. And coincidentally, Scott, we were told by Al Jazeera through their teaser that is in their next film. And so I've been saying these things, but if people were paying attention, then maybe much could have been done. But now that we know, the real issue is not to point fingers. The real issue is to say what needs to be done about that. Again, this is territory for opposition movement. They need to put pressure in parliament. They don't have a lot of I think they've got about 30 or 40 something MPs, because you've got triple C MPs who were elected on 29 March last year. And then you have those like Rusty Mackham, Job Scala, that were never kicked out of parliament but are triple C. So they can make noise in parliament. You don't have to have two-thirds majority to raise these issues and ask the questions. Why has this been done? What is the government going to do about it? The evidence is overwhelming. Al Jazeera was able to put people on camera, and people were speaking on their own behalf. They were not coerced. Um, and the acts of criminality are self-evident. So it's important for the political opposition and civil society also. They need to raise awareness, and for people to understand that the problems that we face today in Zimbabwe are not necessarily problems that cannot be resolved. These are problems that can be resolved overnight if the state is willing to do what needs to be done. As I demonstrated, our hospitals need the 5 hospitals, they need 50 million US dollars every year to run. And this is 50 combined for the 5 hospitals. And what is looted, what is smuggled is worth 2 billion. It would run these hospitals for 40 years. So we don't have medication in hospitals, not because of sanctions, not because of anything else, but because of criminality. The money is being looted, the minerals are being plundered. As I say it again, I want to re-emphasize on this point because it's a sore point for me. 2,500 women die every year giving birth, and to build a maternity theater is 37,000. But the government of Zimbabwe has not built a single maternity theater at the biggest hospital in Zimbabwe. The 2 billion that is worth of gold that is smuggled every year will build 54,000 maternity units. And this is something that is on our fingertips. We don't have to look for what it means. We already know what it means to us. It means suffering for a lot of people. It means a lot of people are not able to go to bed on a full stomach. It means people don't have access to healthcare. It means people do not have jobs. It means the foreign currency that is supposed to be coming back to the country, as we saw with Brother Paul, does not come back. It means money is actually being stolen from you and I and taken and banked in Dubai. Dubai is too big for anything to happen to it, but there's certainly something that can be done in Zimbabwe. And I would like to see a lot of this material being part of the election. I hope the election happens. We see that Douglas Monzola is trying to stop the election. If the election goes ahead, this should be on the election menu. People need to understand where their suffering is coming from. People need to understand that the solutions are there. Zimbabwe is so wealthy, it doesn't need to borrow money. We owe the World Bank about 1.5 billion dollars. This can be paid with the gold that's being smuggled, and still have a change of 500 million US dollars. And that 500 million US dollars can run our central hospitals for 10 years. They will come back to you and say this money does not belong to people, this is private money. But the Zimbabwean government owns mines. When a government owns something, it's owning that particular entity on behalf of the citizens. So it's our gold, those minerals that are being mined from mines that are owned by Zimbabweans through the Zimbabwean government. It's ours. And the taxes that are not being paid by gold being bought from Akorokozas could be funding hospitals. The royalties that are not being paid, they're having to sell that gold, underprice it in order to get quick money. If it was sold properly on the market, it would get its full value, and that value is what would have been used to fund the public services that Zimbabwe so much needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hopewell. And one final question from me. After we watched the documentary, quite a few people who support ZANU-PF were saying that this smuggling is necessary because the country is under sanctions and it's the only way to take gold out of the country. Um, What's your comment on that?
Well, it's an argument that they used to explain the criminality that was taking place, but it's an argument that does not hold any water because Zimbabwe's gold is not under sanctions, and the Reserve Bank, which is the sole buyer of gold through Fidelity, is not on sanctions. I've just posted on top of this Twitter space the document which was written in response to the Al Jazeera questions by the governor, Mr. John Mangujika, the governor of the central bank, where he clearly stated that there is no um, he says the bank is not a sanctioned entity, and these cited individuals are not sanctioned persons either. There are no sanctions on Zimbabwean exports and imports, including trade in gold, to warrant Zimbabwe to circumvent international sanctions through illicit trade of gold. As such, the claim that there is a scheme to bust international sanctions using illicit ways shows beyond doubt that the peddlers of this narrative have a sinister agenda with nefarious objectives of tarnishing both the bank and the Republic of Zimbabwe. This is the bank which has said it itself. This is the central bank governor who has said it. So I mean, how do you come back and say we're doing it for sanctions when the bank itself says there are no sanctions against Zimbabwe's gold? There are no sanctions against the bank itself because it is the sole buyer through Fidelity. So it's not true.
Thank you very much, Hopewell, for that. I don't know if you've got any time for maybe one or two questions
One more
before
question.
you leave, or maybe you need to leave. How much time do we
Um,
have with you?
I'm happy to take questions before I leave.
Okay. Um, so perhaps we could
Can I,
ask one or two people to answer, to ask questions. And I think Simba would like to ask a question. Please go ahead, Simba.
Okay, thank you very much. And great salutation to the restoration of human rights. You folks, you're the ones who paid for my stay in Scotland. You raised £500 when we started the filming of the documentary in Scotland that day. I think you will remember when the CIOs were contacting me, trying to disrupt me because they, at that time, so were suspecting that I was going to organize journalists around to get to Mnangagwa. And they did disrupt me, but little did they know that investors who they were going to meet were people that were part of my team. But I want to give great salutation to restoration of human rights. You folks, you did it. At a time when a lot of people stayed away from the Glasgow demonstration, you managed to embarrass Mnangagwa in a big, massive way. You proved it. There were less than 50 people that day, wasn't there, Wongai, at Glasgow? And the restoration of human rights did it. You managed to organize all that, food, everything, premises. That was massive. That was big. And as you can see, it was historic. The bits and pieces that I produced around that time, as you can see now, is nothing compared to what is coming out now, which is going to benefit not just Zimbabwe, but the African continent. But quickly, I want to just throw this, folks. Tomorrow is going to be part 4. I am a member of the team that has been assembling this documentary over the last 4 years. And some people say 4 years. It's actually 5 years, because it was in 2018 when I first exposed Kamlesh Patni on live video. When I called him and I lied to him that he has left a suitcase with gold at the RGM airport, and he must come back and collect it. And I want to ask here, while we are here, Zimbabweans, what are you learning? Number one, and what do you intend to do with all this knowledge? There's going to be a lot that's going to be needed so that you can feed back into the journalistic work so that these media researchers can carry on, can go into part 5, part 6, part 7, but that there be implementation. But folks, quickly, I've got a big, massive question here to the last speaker. Hopewell Chin'ono, are you going to apologize to me and to the Zimbabwean people for disrupting me from
This thing,
let
Simba,
me
has
just
got
no
nothing to
please, can
do.
I finish? Can
No,
I finish?
no,
Can I
no, no,
finish?
no, no, no,
Hopewell?
no, no. I don't want to take your ongoing vendetta with me to this space. If this, if the the people that invited me, they invited me to talk about this, not to talk about me and you. I've no desire. I've told you so many times, and I've blocked you from all my accounts. I've no desire to engage with you.
Hello.
Yes, I also wanted to say the same thing, Simba. Can we try and focus on the issue at hand? I understand there are other issues, but this platform is not for those issues. If we can focus on the issue at hand and discuss the way forward, that's what we are here for. So if you've got questions, can we ask something that that is along the issue at hand at the moment? Thank you.
I think
Please,
Hopewell
tomorrow
needs to
is
go
part 4.
now.
Tomorrow is part 4. Hopewell Chin'ono, are you going to apologize for backing up Celia Mnangagwa and blocking the Zimbabwe people?
Oh
Sorry,
dear.
guys. I
The
think I
queen
have to
of the
leave
Gold
because
Mafia,
I'm not
Hopewell.
interested in all this nonsense.
I apologize for that, Hopewell. We just want to focus on this topic that we've raised, and any other issues. We'll just say beforehand that if you're going to raise any other issues, we're just going to drop you. So please, can we just focus on the topic and let's be respectful, of what we're trying to do here. Thank you. If there's nobody else who'd like to ask
I was
a
gonna ask a
question
question,
to
Nikki.
Hopewell, then maybe we can release him.
Hi, Nikki. It's
Is there anyone
Alvina.
who'd like to ask a question specifically?
It's Alvina. Can I ask a question to Hopewell?
I don't think there's anyone who's indicated that
Sure,
they want to
sure.
ask a
Nikki,
question.
sorry, Alvina is speaking.
Okay.
I think you can't hear Alvina. If you can allow Alvina to just go ahead and
All
ask a
right.
question.
Okay.
Okay. Hopewell, thank you so much for your impassioned talk. There were a lot of questions I was going to ask along the way, but I think you actually covered all of them about the effects these activities are having upon the citizens. So just maybe as a lasting thought from yourself, I do note that from the tweets that you pulled up from your account and all that, you were calling their bluff since 2021 and going back to last year and all of that stuff. So Al Jazeera, they did a great job, of course, but they are not going to help Zimbabweans. I just wondered if you've got any lasting words for Zimbabweans who are listening, or maybe just to put a word out there for Zimbabweans as a way forward from the situation.
Thank you very much. I think I will start with the opposition, as I said earlier, that the opposition is a government in waiting. They need to put pressure on the government of Zimbabwe to explain this openly, because this is a massive plunder of Zimbabwe's natural resources. People are dying every day in Zimbabwe because of this kind of criminality that's taking place. Now we have evidence of the criminality, as opposed to what the president's spokesperson tried to do to intimidate journalists and to calling them names and threaten them with imprisonment. The government needs to explain what was happening. What did it know about what was happening? And the only people that have the capacity to hold the government to account officially, it is the opposition members of parliament. I see that Rusty Markham and Wende, they posed some questions, but more needs to be done. And more importantly, outside parliament, there is need to educate citizens to understand, because the average person in the street knows that something is going on with gold, but they don't actually understand the impact that it has on their personal lives. They do not understand that they are having to um, pay money for their parents who need health care because of that gold. The linkages, the relatedness of things must be very direct and clear. And it's important for opposition leaders across the board, including Nelson Chamisa, to use their platforms to articulate these things in simple language that is understood by everyone every day. We are headed into an election. It's important for citizens to understand what this election is about. This election is about choosing new leaders who will put the central issues that are affecting Zimbabwe at the center of their campaign. And one of those central issues for me is health. It's schools, it's clean drinking water, it's roads, it's employment. 95% of our potential workforce is out of work, which means only 5% of our potential workforce is actually employed, which means taxes are not being paid. And all these things come to affect you and I, rich or poor. We are all affected when the government becomes dysfunctional. And the people that need to hold these people to account is the opposition. And I wish we had shadow opposition ministers, where the shadow opposition minister for the opposition would be holding Mutuli Ncube to account, because beyond the technicalities of what we've been seeing in the last three films, I don't know what will be in tomorrow's film. um, one of the guys that needs to account is Mtuli Ncube, because this is revenue that is being taken out of the country. He's in charge of the central bank under the Minister of Finance. What did he know? What did he not know? And why didn't he know if these things were happening under his nose, under his ministry? The police, they need to account. Minister of Home Affairs, Kazembe, uh, did he know about this? Yes, he knew, because in 2020, he put out a statement saying 150 million US dollars worth of gold is being smuggled out of the country. What did he do between 2020 and today, when Al Jazeera is exposed with evidence what has been happening? What did his ministry do? What did the police force do? What did the authorities at the what do you call it, at the airport? This guy who is in the film, called Chidodo, has been at it at least since 2008. And this was in newspapers. But the guy was still employed at the airport. Why was it not an issue for the airport authorities? So if you go onto the top of this Twitter space, you'll see a tweet that I've put there, where there's a newspaper article proving that this guy was involved in smuggling as far back as 2009. Why are these people still there? Why were they employed? So those are the important questions that the opposition, civil society, and all of us as citizens, we need to ask. But as citizens, we put pressure on our representatives in parliament. We ask them to go to parliament to represent us. They must ask these questions. And the leaders should be talking about these things, politically conscientizing people about what has been happening. What I find funny is that there are some opposition leaders, not necessarily in Triple C, but in other parties, who are quiet. I've never seen Douglas Monzora talking about this, or Elizabeth Valerio talking about it. They are running for office. And this gives rise to people to start being suspicious of them. I mean, we are not suspicious of Monzora. We know where he stands. He's a ZANU-PF stooge. But there are other politicians who are not necessarily in parliament. They should be speaking. These are community-based issues because they affect our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hopewell. Wongai, would you like to take over?
Thank you so much, Mukoma Wopo. I see Mukoma Stanford is waiting, has been waiting for a very long time. If you've got something to say, Mr. Beatty, please go ahead.
Thank you. Um,